Welcome to Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
I mean, who wants to have sex with a guy named Bob?
Oh, Bob. Just doesn't sound right. Oh, Bob.
Bob. Oh, Bob.
Oh, Bob.
Bob. Bob. Bob. With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
That's Jaime. Protege of mine. Rank number 32 in the federal prison system.
32?
That's right.
Out of what, 20?
Visit us at IHateCritics.net. Everyone's a Critic Podcast.com. We're on Facebook. Our Twitter and Instagram handle is CriticsPod. If you follow us on any of those social media sites, you can see our participate in our top fives, watch the trailers, read Sean's reviews, and interact with us. And then there's Patreon. If you want to be a Patreon supporter, head over to IHateCritics.net/Patreon. It's the best way to help support the podcast. I've been saying it for almost a month now. We got new swag that will be going out shortly. I don't know what shortly means, but it's a word.
We've got one address, so if you supply me with the goods, I will just send them this week.
I guess I could do that. And I technically have a few other addresses from the last time, provided they're still up to date. I just keep forgetting to, while I'm at work, to send the emails or the Facebook messages. But if you're a Patreon supporter, I need your contact information. Even if you've already given it to me before, I'm not positive you haven't moved in the last 2 years or whatever. So if you want to message me on Facebook with your address, provided you want something, or our Facebook page, you don't have to find me. Go to our Facebook page and send us a message, and we will get that stuff sent out ASAP. And I will try to reach out as well. And then we're on all your podcatchers, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe to us wherever you listen to us. Rate and review the show. It does help out. Let's get to our new trailers this week. I guess the big one's Pet Sematary.
The big one?
The biggest trailer of the week.
All right. Yeah, I guess the latest in the unnecessary remake sweepstakes.
Well, I wouldn't call it unnecessary because the first one sucked.
It's just a shitty story.
I've never read the book, so I don't know.
I don't know either, but I didn't care for the story as it was presented in the first movie, and I didn't care for this trailer either. It's amazing how quickly Jason Clarke, has run out his welcome with me, because I loved him in the Planet of the Apes movie that he was in, and since then he's just been utter garbage ever since, and I don't understand it. I thought he was talented.
Well, he is talented. I mean, he's in a movie that we'll talk about shortly as well this weekend. But the trailer itself definitely reminds me of how I felt after reading the book. This was the second Stephen King book that I ever read after Carrie, and it was quite a thing. I mean, I stopped the book many times at age 12 because I couldn't keep reading. It definitely freaked me out. Now, they're doing something neat with the marketing with this one, at least, where despite who the players are involved and why it may or may not be necessary, like the font is the same as the original release book. That's kind of neat. That's the kind of thing that I'm thinking of. And the reason why I think that's important is because Stephen King has a bit of a revival going on right now for some of his older works. Stranger Things, I think, and It, of course, that's his, but that kind of 80s horror cliche niche or whatever is not only big with our age group, but is starting to be big with younger people too, having watched Stranger Things and whatnot. So I think that this one actually can be successful, and the people like Jason Clarke, yes, you're not crazy about him, but I think people like him are attracted to this because there's a bit of a niche there. John Lithgow's not a terrible actor, obviously, too. I think it has potential.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think it's definitely going to be successful just based on the fact that it's a popular title, a popular book. And the trailer didn't turn me off. I mean, I think maybe it is a weak story. I haven't read the book, so you'd have to, I don't know if you liked it or not. You were 12 when you read it, so maybe you need to read it again.
Pet Sematary. It's one of the best, scariest things I've ever read. I mean,
have you read it since you were 12?
Yeah.
Okay.
I read it in college as well.
Good.
I wasn't closing the book or anything, but it's very excellent writing. And in terms of Stephen King, there's Shawshank Redemption writing, then there's stuff on the bottom, like one of the Dark Tower books that are a sequel, that are way too long. The Stand is way too long.
So you're putting like That's on the bottom because you haven't read it, or are you talking
what
about
I'm trying to say
quality,
is
you're saying?
Pet Cemetery is up there at the top in terms of
easy to read.
how good things are.
And I'm saying I don't care whether or not Stephen King wrote this, or even I don't care about the story he wrote. I care about the movie that gets made from it. And the trailer, based off of that, is not that impressive to me. Just as the first movie was not at all impressive to me.
I do think the trailer looks way better than the first movie.
Yeah, Dale Midkiff, Jason Clarke. I'm going to go with Jason Clarke each time.
I mean, it's not that hard to over-impress when it comes to that movie.
People like that movie.
Why?
Don't ask me. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not all that scary, but it can't be in like a fun way.
Because it scared kids, maybe.
Yeah,
but kids
maybe.
probably shouldn't have been watching it.
No.
So.
A lot of people named their kid Gage after that movie came out, too. I remember a lot of people, one in particular in 1999, a teenage girl that I was working with at a restaurant. She's like, I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to name it Gage after the baby in Pet Cemetery. I'm like, tell me no more. I don't want to know anything about the future problems you're going to have with this child.
Hey, I have a story for you that's related to that.
Yeah.
My house is haunted.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And we live in this town, Sherrod, or just outside Sherrod. And everybody we meet goes, "Oh, you live in that haunted house." It's getting old, but we went to my son had a play date with this friend, and his mom definitely believed that our house was haunted and was telling us stories. And then she's like 5 years older than me, and her name is Reagan.
Perfect.
And she explained why she was named Reagan.
After the greatest president in our history.
Yes. Except for he wasn't president yet. He had 10 more years. In fairness, I wanted to name my kid Reagan. That's one of the 15 million names I got shot down with. Quit picking characters from movies.
Fine, Leatherface.
Glass.
Now this is a trailer. This looks like a hell of a movie. I am so in for this. This got me excited again, all over again for this concept. It maybe showed a little bit too much, but I'm still in.
Yeah, it's a better trailer than the first trailer, but I mean, I'm still wanting to see this because of a long-standing desire to see a sequel to the particular movie that it belongs to. I'm not going to say it because I just don't want to ruin it for people that don't want to know it. I mean, if they watch the trailer, they'll probably figure it out. But
you can't really. If you watch the trailer, you're figuring it
right
out. But yeah, it really is a trilogy, I guess. And I still feel like there's a movie missing here. Like, how did they get there? I'm assuming that movie is not going to be. We're not going to know that. They're just going to skip to them all being in this asylum thing, or whatever it is.
Maybe. I was thinking that perhaps what brings them to that particular spot is Glass orchestrating something to get them all three there. And that would bring David Dunn out, it would bring the guy from Split. So
If I got to theorize, it's going to be that Dunn is going wherever this beast guy might be. Because that's kind of his thing. He's going to, he heard about him on TV. And so he's going to try and be wherever he is in order to see if he gets caught, Dunn's going to try and be where he is to stop him again.
But that seems to be after they've all been in this hospital. That hospital seems to be the beginning of the movie.
So I agree with you. It looks like that, but I'm thinking
they did a great job
misleading.
with the Sarah Paulson character and building her up in this one. So I'm interested. She's definitely got something going on.
Either that or she's just a big name they're going to get rid of right away because they're going to break out right and the beast of enemy, or the best of enemies. You had to say beast character. My handwriting sucks.
Best of Enemies is based on a true story. Taraji Henson and Sam Rockwell, two people on opposite sides of the race wars in the late 1960s. He's the head of the clan. She's trying to integrate schools, and they become lifelong friends. And that's the story of how this happens.
Yeah, can Sam Rockwell maybe stop playing characters like this? I mean, his character in 3 Billboards last year was almost a carbon copy of this. I guess that means he's really good at it, and I'm sure that'll be a powerfully charged film, but I don't know. I like him. I want to be able to watch a movie without him being an ass.
It does seem like they're going more on the watchable side than the full-blown art side, I guess. I don't know. It looks like it's going to be a very watchable movie, and I think that's the way to go with a movie like this. I guess Three Billboards ended up winning Oscars and stuff, and I thought that wasn't really worthy of winning stuff other than Sam Rockwell, but maybe, I don't know. It's hard to... It looks good, though, and it looks important, and hopefully people see it, and we'll talk more about it when it comes out. But because we don't want to talk more about that now, we want to talk about Goosebumps. Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween.
Yes, and this is kind of in the vein of the books, where it's kind of more of an anthology story as opposed to a continuing story from the first film, because nobody, aside from a little bit of Jack Black, comes back from the first movie. So we've got 3 new characters here who are at the lead, and basically it's a sister and her little brother and his best friend. It's Halloween. They have this business where they go around cleaning junk out of old houses. They get called to go to this house that happens to have been the childhood home of R.L. Stine, Jack Black's character, and the guy who created Goosebumps. And they find an old book hidden inside of this compartment, and they open it up, and out comes Slappy the Dummy with the voice of Jack Black, and he's of course the bad guy from the first film as well. And basically, Slappy sets about trying to get himself a family using his magic, and eventually he's going to bring all of Halloween to life. And I like this movie. It's not terrible. I kind of enjoyed the just how silly this movie is. There's a whole sequence where they reminded me of something out of was that Kevin Smith movie last year, with his daughter and Jenny
Yoga Hosers.
Yoga Hosers, because he's got tiny little gummy bears that come to life in this movie, and I loved that. I love what they do with the gummy bears. It's very funny. It made me laugh, and there's a number of things in this movie that made me laugh. Jack Black does come back as R.L. Stine, but it's all a big build up to a gag, essentially. It's a pretty funny gag, and this isn't a great movie, but it did remind me a lot of The House with a Clock in Its Walls, which is a movie that was a horror film for kids, and that's what this is. It's kind of a horror movie for kids. It's not scary per se, but it would be scary enough for an 8, 9, 10-year-old to be kind of smiling and laughing and jumping in their seat a little bit, and then reassured. And for that, I think this is pretty great.
Let's move on.
Yeah. I'm so glad that I didn't have to take my son to see this movie, because 3 years ago I did take him to that first Goosebumps movie on his birthday, and I mean, it wasn't bad by any means, but it's just...
I have better things to do with my time.
Exactly.
Yeah, luckily my father-in-law, who I've badmouthed on the show before, he told me that he likes to use our kids to... Because he apparently likes Goosebumps, so he wants to use the grandkid as an excuse to go see it. It's like, by all means. If I was going to take my kid to anything this week, it was going to be First Man. He wanted to see that, believe it or not.
Oh, so did mine, and I did.
Colette.
Colette, yes. This is Keira Knightley, starring in a true story of a woman who is named Colette, her last name anyway, but she goes by her last name because it's a much cooler French name. She lives in the French countryside. She falls for the man who happens to be the man who's been assigned to her for life because they have arranged marriages. And she's arranged to marry Dominic West, and he's a world-famous author who doesn't actually write anything. He's got a team of writers that do it for him, and then he markets himself. He picks her up and decides that she's going to be one of his writers when he can't afford to have anybody else write. And she turns out to write brilliantly, and she writes a book called Claudine. And Claudine becomes this gigantic phenomenon, only he's taking credit for it, and she's sitting on the sidelines. And it's about this woman who slowly but surely discovers herself and her power, and how she's a better, more talented person than her husband is. This movie would be one of the best movies of the year if Dominic West didn't suck so bad. He's terrible. He's an empty shell of an actor, and Keira Knightley repeatedly blows him off the screen in an almost embarrassing fashion. She is brilliant. She's paying one lovely tribute to this brilliant, forward-thinking woman who was a lesbian ahead of her time. She was married, and she did like him, but she realizes pretty quickly that she's into women, and she lives that life, and she goes forward with that life with another woman who's very out and forward, and in the only place in the world you could be in the early 1900s, in Paris. It's very sexy, it's very smart, it's exceptionally directed by Wash Westmoreland, who did Still Alice with Julianne Moore, so he's smart with his leading ladies. He just needs to pick his leading men a little bit better.
When you said Dominic West, I could have swore in the trailer that it was Luke Evans, but really, are they not interchangeable?
I think Luke Evans is a lot better. I've seen the Marsden movie, Marsden and the Women. That he's a much better actor in this.
And Beauty and the Beast, he's not bad in that either. I
Yeah.
guess, so yeah, but they do kind of bear a similarity, right? It's not just me. Dominic West, though, has never really done anything of value for me. I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, boy, he's there a lot, but
he's a TV actor at best.
I thought TV was good now. That's what everybody keeps telling me. Why aren't you watching this?
Oh yeah, isn't he like the Mentalist or something? Or is that another guy that looks a lot like
Simon Baker?
Well, there you go. That's the third in the triumvirate.
The three identical strangers.
You get the multiple Dermots and the multiple Dominics/Simons.
Bad Times at the El Royale.
Yes, this is Drew Goddard directing with John Hamm, Jeff Bridges, Dakota Johnson. The idea is kind of Tarantino-ish with the guy who made Cabin in the Woods, and I kept waiting, because this is the guy who directed Cabin in the Woods, I'm waiting for it to have that punch, like something's going to happen that's going to make this more interesting than it is, and it just never arrives. This is a thriller, I guess. There's multiple different stories going on. Each person who checks into the El Royale, which is a hotel that sits exactly on the border of California and Nevada, so you can sleep in either California or Nevada, depending upon your perspective.
And the rooms cost different prices depending on what state you're in.
It's $1 more to sleep in California.
But $1 meant a lot more back then.
Really, the only good thing about this movie is Cynthia Erivo, who's a brilliant singer, and she gets to sing a few songs in this movie, and she's really great. I think Cabin in the Woods ruined this movie for me, because I kept waiting for, like, okay, well, what are you gonna? How are you gonna heighten this? How are you gonna take this up? And it never arrives. And I guess it's supposed to arrive when Chris Hemsworth fully enters the movie, but by then I'd almost forgotten he was there. And I really wish that John Hamm hasn't gone, because by the time, not spoiler alert, he's not around very long. And he was pretty good early on. And they ruined that pretty quickly. I'm not a fan. I was really shocked. I thought I expected a lot more from Drew Goddard. He's great at atmosphere. He's great at making characters seem colorful, but I don't think the execution is very good here.
I think the movie is really, really good. I do think if you watched it again with kind of like that Logan, I don't think it's necessarily as good as that. And it's not. This is probably, if it makes a top 10, you're talking like number 10 this year, but probably will not make the top. But it's really, really good. I do think if you watch it again, now knowing that the Cabin in the Woods thing, because I know what you're saying,
yeah,
because that doesn't exist in this movie. There's no different world going on or whatever.
La 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 la.
It doesn't have to be.
Still haven't seen.
It doesn't have to be that, though. I mean, I was just waiting for one thing to raise it above what it was. Instead, I thought the Chris Hemsworth thing fell flat.
It did not. I watch it again and think of what's going on in 2018. I think they did a pretty good job of. I think it was a pretty phenomenal movie. Great acting, but again, it's more on the watchable side than, you know. I don't know how much I remember it going forward. I disagree. Actually, I will, because the performances are pretty great. Chris Hemsworth's amazing in this. he's all of a sudden more than Thor, you know, more than the comedy guy. He actually has a pretty creepy character. He in a way he's playing Donald Trump, and they don't come out and say that directly, but there's this amazing scene with that actress you mentioned
Cynthia
who
Erivo
shuts him down, and the way she does it is so. It's kind of the way it needs to be done. You know, that Me Too movement thing. In this scenario, I mean, he represents not only Donald Trump but the media and all sorts of men. But it is, I don't know, it's a really, really good watchable movie that it's just that step below, you know, the Oscar contender movies, or maybe a step and a half, because it does fall in that watchable scale more than anything else. And it's, you know, you have the Tarantino and the Coen brothers and Scorsese. It's that level down, you know, when you have those guys that try to do what they do. It's not quite that, but I do think people will like it. Don't go in there. I know what you're saying. If you go in there thinking Cabin in the Woods, this doesn't have that. It's not like Cabin in the Woods at all. It doesn't. There's nothing. There's no big. I guess there's a million big reveals, but there are so many of them. Like I went to this movie kind of half asleep because I got no sleep last night, and literally every time I started to doze off, somebody died, or got hit with a bottle. I mean, it was ridiculous. I kept waking up and I literally missed it the first 3 times it happened. I missed what happened. I mean, I saw it and I was able to tell, but it was just like bam. But it's a fun, watchable movie with a pretty strong message that I think you'll enjoy it on a second viewing if you ever get a second viewing. But
the interest level in it for me was to the point where I wanted to go to the theater a second time, but also thought that what I had planned for today already was maybe a little more important.
Right.
This title of this film is called what now again? Bad Times at the El Royale?
Yes.
I have it right then. Okay, because at home it was Battle at the Casino Royale. It was Bad Times at the Royale with Cheese. All of these different names came to mind, and to the point where I actually forgot what it was until you guys started saying it right now. Is it better than One Night at McCool's?
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. That's not saying much.
Okay. Because that was the move, like the font and everything made it seem like
it's kind of a shitty title in a way. And just because of Pulp Fiction, El Royale really does automatically makes you start thinking Tarantino, to the point where people walking out of the theater thought Tarantino directed it. Nobody who watches movies they'd know right away Tarantino did not direct this.
No, but I mean, he does use a lot of Tarantino-isms. He uses the structure, he uses he shifts in time, and he uses title cards to tell you where you're at.
But it's not with the same. It's not as good the way that Tarantino does it.
Sure. I guess we're advanced to the point now where people are doing Tarantino homages versus Tarantino doing homages for everything else.
But I do think people should go see it. It is pretty good. And I mean, for not just Chris Hemsworth, but really all the actors in it are really, really good. I think Dakota Johnson kind of will come out as a bigger. I mean, this wasn't a huge hit or anything. It's just kind of a small action movie, I guess. But she's really good in it, and that's kind of the only thing I've ever seen her in. So it was cool to see that. It's worth checking out. First Man.
Yes, this is Damien Chazelle's latest movie, the guy who did Whiplash and La La Land, and he's got a real interesting fascination with these small conclaves of people who have their own way of speaking and their own kind of obsessive personalities. That's kind of where he was with La La Land in the entertainment business. It's where he was with Whiplash, certainly, with the group of characters who are desperately obsessed. And this is very much in the vein of Whiplash in a way, because it is about a group of guys who are completely obsessed with one thing to the point where the rest of the world kind of tolerates it, understands it, and then claps for them at the end. Because there's a lot of opposition to the space race back in the day. People on television saying that we're wasting a lot of money on something that's not really necessary. The best scene in the movie is Claire Foy dressing down another character. You guys are just boys. You're just boys playing with toys, and it's like, she's not wrong. I mean, as much as these guys are experts and they've trained and they've done all this stuff, none of what they're doing is guaranteed to work. Not one of it. It could all just fall apart at any moment. So she's not wrong. These are what, I mean, as much science is involved, it's also, Evel Knievel shit going on too. And that's pretty impressive. To put it in that human realm, I thought was really smart on Damien Chazelle's part. He really does make it feel almost ridiculous and yet at the same time necessary, like something that's a really great human achievement, and at the same time, look how fucking crazy these people are for doing this. He starts that from the very opening scene, which is Neil Armstrong kind of losing control of this plane that he's testing to the point where he's almost going up to space. He's just nearly he's tracing the atmosphere and almost ready to pop through it. Because he's kind of lost control of it. And we get that throughout. As much as he is this stoic, unknowable character who is the complete opposite of anything you've ever seen Ryan Gosling play, he's got that daredevil quality to him that he doesn't really want to acknowledge. He wants to think that he's in control of this, and he's not, and that's what makes him exciting. That's what makes the character in the movie exciting, is that dichotomy of a human being. This movie is really great because Damien Chazelle is really great.
I'm not quite sure how to start with it because I recognize that it's made well and performances are fine in this one, especially Ryan Gosling playing a guy that, for all intents and purposes, is this Ryan Sandberg of the space age. Had no personality,
but
we recognize his greatness. Well, yeah, because we're
the
all...
only reason I say is, like, really outside of our area. Ryan Sandberg's just another guy.
No, if anyone knows baseball, then they would know that Ryan Sandberg is a guy that, yes, he is known as a star, but doesn't have star qualities. And that's what I kept seeing out of Neil Armstrong, that obviously he's very fundamentally sound to the point where he's a Hall of Famer, and gets to do the first man on the moon thing, but there's not a whole lot to him. And this movie keeps trying to prove that there's something to him and show you that there's a deeper level at the end. Well, in between the beginning and the end, it's a history lesson. And the last thing that I want to do when I go into seeing a space movie or a movie about space is another history lesson. I'd like to learn something new. To an extent, I do. I knew all of the things that happened in this film, but a little bit more insight into the supporting characters, such as Ed White, played by Jason Clarke. A little bit more about why Neil Armstrong would feel the way that he would feel going on this particular mission, that he's lost so many before him and how much sacrifice is acceptable. But the movie as a whole is far more of a history lesson / art house type of film than an exciting biography of someone. And for that reason, I can't recommend it. On both sides of me, sighing and readjusting the entire time. And I was a little more excited than the result of this. This is supposed to be a foray for me to show my son like a serious film by a serious filmmaker, not just a blockbuster. And I told him, this is going to be more serious than you're used to. What I didn't expect is that he would yawn 12 times during the movie and me yawn 6 times during the movie. It's a well-made film that you already know about, except for perhaps the close to the beginning and the end. Didn't know a lot about the daughter that he lost. Well, that's the movie right there. It's at the end. I almost wanted to whisper across from me and say Rosebud, because he's got his little bead necklace with him and whatnot, and that's supposed to be like a major revelation that this whole time he was doing what he did for that particular reason. I was just bored by it, and that's maybe not fair to the movie, but snooze.
Maybe see it again without other people with you.
Well, I thought about that too, and then I realized, well, if the movie was fine on its own, I can usually ignore around me.
Yeah, so it sounds like Stanley Kubrick's not in this.
I didn't see Stanley Kubrick, no.
Well, he was the one who filmed the hoax. Because they didn't go to the moon.
Okay, since I don't read about nonsense
So that
like
didn't
that.
they? Well, no, that's the truth. This is nonsense. So they showed the nonsense version of the movie.
I see. Okay.
I think this movie is excellent. I think it cooks because Ryan Gosling's performance is really spectacular, and Claire Foy is amazing. She's just utterly brilliant. Like I said, that scene is it crackles. She's so great in that scene I mentioned. And there's a number of other scenes where she's able to do that as well, where she's like, you're going to sit down, you're going to tell those kids that you might not be coming back. And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. Tell him. she was a badass. She was awesome.
This will happen with our classic as well, but it's necessary to ask the question as a film, like, well, then why are you with? I mean, you knew what his career trajectory was. It's not like he changed. You changed and want him to change. And every single wife of a pilot in every single movie I ever see about pilots and astronauts, the wife is like, well, do you ever think of at home? Well, yeah, do you ever think of your life, what it might be like with a pilot? Like, I want to have sympathy for the wives, but the movies never give me anything beyond the scene where she's dressing him down or she's dressing somebody else down. What responsibility does she have for the life that she chooses? We're always questioning these pilots, but come on now. I'm asking a very serious question here. It's always frustrating to watch female characters, as strong as the performances may be, make the choice of, well, you should think about your family.
All she was saying is that he's not going to leave the house without talking to the kids, which he tried to do. He tried to leave without talking to his kids. That's her only point. What's wrong with that? You should be dressed down for that. And she's supportive throughout the film. She went to Houston with him. She's with him the whole time. But yes, she's concerned that he's going to kill himself. That's what the point of this is this humanizing these people and what they were doing. What they were doing was completely insane. Completely insane. And I'm happy we did it. I'm glad that these insane people were doing what they did. But it was completely nuts. And it's good that she was recognizing that. She was the one who was trying to tell them, try and be a little bit realistic here.
I don't think that they were having
perfectly fair,
irresponsible, reckless behavior. I don't think Neil Armstrong was exercising reckless behavior. I think
absolutely they were. They were on the razor's edge the entire time. Every time they went to space, they were on the razor's edge. And we know that because within the last 20 years, we've had 8 people die in space. Come on now. It's dangerous every time we do it because we don't actually have, as much as we think we have control over this, we don't. That's the point of the movie.
Oh, okay. Well, I was under the impression that that all of us make choices, though, and she was like getting mad at him for being who he was, and that's the part that bothers me.
But he wasn't being who he was. He wasn't being who he was. He was trying to walk out on his kids without telling them, without talking to him, without saying goodbye. He wanted to slip away in the night and not talk to him. That's not who he was. That's not being who he was.
I'm referring to more like the movie arc itself and how not just that scene, but she's always at him and always at everybody. And every wife of a pilot or astronaut in every movie like this is after the husband saying, you need to take responsibility. See what you're doing to your family. Are you ever coming back? It's like... Every time he got in a plane, he might not be coming back. Like, you chose this life. Maybe get on board or get out. It's really simple.
When they make a movie about our podcast, there's going to be a scene of my wife dressing me down the entire time. If you've not seen that, might be the arc.
I guess that's the thing, though. It's like, you come to some kind of compromise instead of making the character... constantly feeling guilty about their choice to push the border. If it wasn't Neil Armstrong, it would be somebody else.
You're judging Claire Foy's character by a dozen other movies, and that's not fair to her. That's not fair to this performance. This performance is fantastic.
That's completely not true. I'm judging this performance based on every other character that's like this.
That's just what I just said.
Think of...
You just reiterated what I said.
Not even just pilots, but I'll go to a movie like Walk the Line, and I'm watching the Jennifer Goodwin character get really pissed at Johnny Cash for being the same person he was when she met him. Like, oh, he's a little on the edge, like he's doing things that maybe he shouldn't do, but he's also on the road a lot. Oh, you mean a musician? Oh, that's funny. You had that choice right in front of you, and you still said, yeah, I'd really like to marry a musician, but yes, it's all his fault. That's what I'm getting at, is with all of these characters, it's okay for them to lambast their husbands for doing exactly what they did the first time. It's hard for me to watch because I can't understand their point of view without the movie explaining their point of view.
That's not this movie.
It's not any movie about this. That's what I'm saying. I want to feel sympathy for Claire Ford, but all I see is
every other character in another movie. That's not fair to her.
You're right. I have no opinion on this one. Let's move on. That's just my opinion on this one. And my opinion is that every character should like take stock of where they're at before they start lambasting their husbands for being exactly who they are.
Hashtag him too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's exactly who I am.
I'm just joking. That was a joke, Josh. That was just a joke, man.
I'm trying to think of where to go with this. I mean, part of the problem too is I don't know. How do I get out of this one?
No, it bored the bejesus out of the three members of my party, and I'm sure that because of the prestige of Damien Chazelle behind the camera. Don't forget, La La Land was my favorite movie of 2 years ago, so it's not like I'm going back on my word or anything. Like, he is a very good filmmaker. It's a very good-looking movie. I mean, even the way that it's shot, pay attention to the way that this one's shot, because it's almost like being at that particular time in the 60s. The grain of the film at certain points is like, wow, is this stock footage? No, Ryan Gosling's in the shot. So, very well-made film in terms of how it looks and how it's designed. But the filler is stuff that we already know. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized Undisputed Classic.
Speaking of boring the bejesus out of us, the Undisputed Classic this week is The Right Stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You know what would have been a really good way to pull 8-year-old me out of the clouds and never wanting to be an astronaut?
Movie.
Watch this movie and First Man back to back. And then I would have said, oh, I'll go back to dreaming about third base for the Cubs. I'll just keep that alive. No, Right Stuff. The Right Stuff is the story of the space program, basically from its inception all the way through the Mercury crew. And oh, it gets it all in. It's 3 hours and 12 minutes long, directed by Philip Kaufman. He co-wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was involved in The Big Chill, if I'm not mistaken either. That explains why there's some of the cast here that there is, including Jeff Goldblum. But this is a story coming from Chuck Yeager, played by Sam Shepard, on through the Mercury program, and the swagger of the pilots versus the bureaucracy. They go into family life, of course. But for the most part, I like The Right Stuff is better than First Man because I was more engaged with all of these characters. Whether or not it's an accurate representation of who they are or not, I can't tell you on that one, but I can tell you that they were more interesting. Fred Ward as Gus Grissom is a more interesting character to me. Same thing goes for Cooper that Dennis Quaid is playing. I'm forgetting his first name. Leroy Cooper.
Gordon.
Well, his actual name is Leroy, but Leroy G. Cooper, yes. And we even got Lance Henriksen in there. He appeared twice this weekend for me. But as a group of pilots, and then Chuck Yeager on the side, always constantly trying to compete with everything that everyone's doing, that's more interesting to me than First Man. But the film has a lot of fat on it. I wish that maybe they'd focused on one particular area. Because at times, the fat on it, the length of it, makes it seem like we are, again, watching a documentary. And they're pulling away from the fun of it, the characters.
It was almost like they held 3 movies together with fat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's different areas represented here for sure. And held together by side moments, you know. It's not a bad film. It was nominated for Best Picture back in 1983, if I'm not mistaken. and received 3 or 4 Oscars as well for some of the technical awards, and I think one for best score. Bill Conti of Rocky fame.
I like this movie now. I am kidding. But Jason from New Mexico asked why this wasn't as big a hit as like Apollo 13, or why it wasn't as memorable, and the only thing I can think of is the length. I mean, that's
3 hours at that time in 1983 was a bad idea. That's basically what it comes down to, because this is a pretty good movie, really. Philip Kaufman is kind of trying to capture the entire breadth of the space race, and again, it's about humanizing these people and taking them from these manufactured characters that Life magazine created and turning them into real people. And that's fascinating to me. I liked I love that approach to this, and I thought the characters became very human and very real. And watching Fred Ward and knowing 5 years after this he's going to be dead is terrifying and kind of fascinating. And Ed Harris is pretty spectacular in this movie, playing a character who could be very boring, but that scene where he tells the vice president, "No, you can't go in and see my wife," that was a badass scene. I loved that. That was a great moment. I loved the way he backed her up in that moment. It's so unexpected of that character. I thought for sure he was going to go along with it. He's kind of a white bread, weird, kind of a hard, white bread character who doesn't have much to him, and he kind of develops a little bit more throughout. Everybody kind of brings a little bit more out of him. I liked the way that built up. I loved the way that Chuck Yeager sort of developed as well and changed, and still wanted to push the boundaries, but he knew that the space thing was not for him. I loved the way that Sam Shepard played that, and he respected those guys and didn't regret anything about not going to space. I thought that was pretty cool. I really liked the way this builds up and it takes its time. It's very patient in building this story. And of course, because it's got an epic sweep, it's got a lot of stuff to get to. And I appreciated that. And it didn't feel like 3 hours to me. I really didn't feel it at all. I was surprised by the end that I didn't feel 3 hours.
It felt like 5 hours to me.
It's broad.
But you got to keep in mind, this subject matter does nothing for me at all. I mean, not that I don't believe Stanley Kubrick made I believe we actually made it to the moon. I just don't care. I realize that's impressive. Space. By the time we're really colonizing anywhere, I'm going to be long gone, and I'm not. I don't know. The ocean and space are too. Like Gravity, to me, could have been one of the scariest movies of all time. It could have been just her floating for 3.5 hours, and that would freak the hell. I mean, open water. It kind of would have been like that. It's something that's scary and not interesting to me, just more scary. And so I'm not into science at all. So the subject matter, I think, makes it even harder for me to watch movies like this. But anything else on The Right Stuff or First Man before I move on?
It's altogether a subject that I wanted to know a little bit more about through watching these two films, to get more a sense of what life was like training for the space program. And I think that I've got that. Now, I've got a little bit more depth on Neil Armstrong and Aldrin as well, the ill-advised comment that he makes in First Man. John Glenn, definitely portrayed by Ed Harris, exactly who I imagined he would be. And I saw The Right Stuff when I was 6 years old, believe it or not. My parents, my mom specifically, wanted me to watch this.
Thank
right?
God you didn't remember it, or you'd hate space.
I didn't remember it. My thought is that I definitely must have had some sort of play set out and was, creating my own battle. As
kind of what I was doing while this was on. If I'm being honest with you.
Which figures did you get down to play with?
Jay and Silent Bob Monopoly.
Nice. But altogether, in terms of sort of the passion I feel about space and the space program and everything like that, but this week, unfortunately, didn't live up to what I was hoping to get out of both movies. I just know more.
I think in some ways this your reaction kind of reflects the way people reacted to the Right Stuff in '83, because people don't want to see astronauts as anything less than heroes, and that's certainly something you see in Neil Armstrong. It's something you see in all of the guys from the original project. Is that these weren't. I mean, as special as they are, as brave as they are, they're people. They're human beings. They had perfectly human feelings, and they had perfectly human failings. You know, they were womanizers, and they talked like everybody else does. And as smart as they were and as brave as they were human. And people didn't want to see that. People wanted this space. They want outer space to be this grand achievement and done by people who were outsized superheroes. That's why all the schools that I attended as a kid were named for astronauts. I went to Virgil Grissom Elementary, and when we were around, we went to Ed White Elementary and John Glenn Elementary. All those were named for astronauts, and because we wanted to pretend that these guys were something more than human. They were these grand, inaccessible heroes, and really they were just people. And that's what I think the part of the reaction to both of these movies is seeing them as people and not just seeing them as these gods among men who did something that no one else could ever do.
I'm not getting that from Josh's reaction, though.
My reaction on these movies is more along the lines of what I envisioned the atmosphere of the space program to be, and our adventurer spirit as humans. And the films only kind of allude to that a couple of times, that this type of sacrifice is necessary if we want to get to where we need to go. Progressive ideas like that are always inherently bold to say out loud, especially on screen. And with this one, I feel like my memory of learning about the space program is that they were very passionate about it, and the films are more decrying that passion as a manufacturer of what the media wanted us to think. Of course, they're people. I try not to think of them as heroes, but boy, like you said, when they name stuff after astronauts, and when people cry harder at the Challenger explosion that they do and say like a genocide in another country, then yeah, it's going to be conflated. I don't have any Neil Armstrong action figures,
Maybe you need some.
Maybe I do. I'm sure that they exist.
All right, and because of these two space movies, our top 5 is top 5 space movies. And
put your top 5. Who's your top 5?
We'll start with Ian Britt. Number 5, Spaceballs. 4, Independence Day. 3, Star Wars: A New Hope. 2, Armageddon. 1, Guardians of the Galaxy. Jason from New Mexico. 5, Ice Pirates. 4, The Dark Crystal. 3, Pandorum. 2, The Day the Earth Stood Still. And number 1, Arrival. It's such a vast category that I felt the need to pick some very different movies. Cousin Jeff had Star Wars: The Force Awakens, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars: Return of the Jedi, and Star Wars: A New Hope. And I had, in no real order, Arrival, Gravity, 2001, Space Odyssey, Moon, and then Hidden Figures. Josh?
The disclaimer that I clearly put at the top of my list stated that it wasn't so much a movies about space as movies that make me think of space. And so that cancels the Star Wars and the aliens and all that good stuff. Yes, some of it is set in space, but it doesn't make me think of it like that.
That's kind of how I went too, I guess. But I think when I think of space, it's different than when you think of space too.
Yeah, for sure. Number 5 is the 2002 version of Solaris for me. Number 4 is Gravity. 3 is Interstellar. Apparently I messed up with that one, so I'll have to go in and check what my opinion is. 2 is Contact, and number 1 is 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was glad to see that Jason had Pandorum as something on his list, because oddly enough, as much as a creature feature, like low-key knockoff film that is, it makes me think of the dark reaches of space for whatever reason.
Sean? I would just like to give a shout out to The Martian with Matt Damon. That movie's really great, and I think people have forgotten it too quickly.
I had it on my list, but then I had forgotten about Hidden Figures, and I threw it out for Hidden Figures.
It's on my honorable mentions.
Josh did mention it in the honorable mentions.
Number 18 in 1988. Squeezed and pulled and hurt my neck in 1988.
Squeezed and pulled and hurt your neck in 1988.
1988.
Okay, there's 6 films in '88. 3 of them I can't remember off the top of my head, and perhaps you could
I
pull
wrote
them up.
5 of them down. There's something like The Kiss or something like that that we don't have to talk about.
Okay,
all.
great. We should skip that then.
Go ahead and start with the
3 ones that I did watch this week, though. We'll start with The Accused, starring Kelly McGillis and Jodie Foster in an Academy Award-winning role. She plays somebody named Sarah Tobias, who was gang raped in a bar and wanted to send her assailants to jail. Kelly McGillis plays a district attorney or assistant district attorney that's trying to prosecute everyone. And to me, this is the story of somebody trying to get everyone to listen to her, and the title meaning something on both ends of the stage. Now, she feels in a way like she's the accused because the one that's really being questioned is her the entire film. And this is from 1988. This should be old news by now, in theory, based on the evolution of humans as a civilization. But unfortunately, we've got the same crap, different day, 30 years later. I felt that this film's a little too close to home for pretty much everything that we hear in the news. So its ending, which turns out in her favor for the most part. I mean, everyone's going to go to jail for something. Even the way that they have to go about doing it, charging with criminal solicitation, thank you, as opposed to sexual assault charge. She got to tell her story. And so in a way, her story gets resolved, but it's a fine film. It's very litigious in terms of a typical courtroom drama setting at times, but it approaches in perhaps the hardest way of the time the idea of victimhood and what victims can do and empower themselves. What's disappointing is the way that every single character around her acts like at some point in the movie. And I would love to say that this didn't hold as much water today, that it doesn't hold up. But it totally holds up and should be watched often. I watched the 10-minute scene of question in this film, the actual rape that occurs in a women's studies class, my first semester of college. And I'm one of 25 people in the class and 2 dudes. And we're watching this, and it hit me then like you don't get material like this when you're learning about these subjects. Of course, this is so upfront and in your face on purpose and good. You know, this movie has a message you can actually run with. Like, you have to watch this now, okay? Since you aren't acknowledging any of the victims in your society, you're gonna have to watch this now and see what victimhood really might feel like. This film does a good job of that.
It is hard to watch this movie because it is so beyond its time. It's of this time. It's of that time. It's just incredibly powerful, overwhelming, hard to watch, and absolutely incredible, unforgettably so. Jodie Foster's amazing, and yeah, God, yeah, I hate that guy who was cheering so much. I wanted to reach through the screen and just punch him to death. On top of the rapists,
it's hard to watch.
Yeah,
and it kind of explains why people don't automatically come out right away, why they will wait 35 years, if ever, to come out and say something.
Yeah, the movie should be a teaching tool for people, as sad as that is.
I mean, she's everybody's questioning everything about her, everything she does. She makes a joke. Oh, well, she was joking about it. Clearly she meant to do it. All this, how were you dressed? What were you wearing? Were you provoking them? What?
Yeah.
And the coldness with which they treat her, the moments after she's seeking treatment, if I imagine that it's the case with a majority of people that have to go have a rape kit done for them, but that's so cold. Like, you've got her there and she's traumatized, but you have to ask pointed questions overlapping each other, and then you send her down the hall to take a shower. Like, there's got to be somebody there for your trauma victim. I mean, if they had a gaping wound in their body, you wouldn't leave their side. She's got a gaping wound in her mind, and they just tell her to go bathe herself off like a piece of meat. It just, the whole thing pisses me off. It should just be seen.
Oh, there's a scene that Jodie Foster is not in where Kelly McGillis is negotiating to try and put the rapist behind bars, and she gets him. But they take sex out of it, so there's no sex in the crime. They still get they're going to get the same amount of time, but it's an assault, not a sex crime, because the one of the guys is a college boy frat guy named Bob, and well, Bob's got a bright future ahead of him, and having that on his record would really hold him back. So fucking what? He raped a woman. Yeah, this is going to get held against him. But that was our culture at the time. Or still
that just
today.
happened, not that.
Yeah, I was just that
Who's
swimmer
that
guy
yeah.
in Stanford. Yeah, he's got a bright future. We can't do this to him. Screw you,
Pumpkinhead.
Now that is a transition. Pumpkinhead stars Lance Henriksen, amongst others, in a film directed and produced by creature effects guy Stan Winston. He's no longer with us, but when he was here, he's the guy responsible for some of the most iconic special effects of their time, such as the Terminator, Terminator 2, Aliens, Jurassic Park. He was in there on all that, and for him to have his own creature film, I got excited about the possibility of at least it looking good, and it does. Pumpkinhead is a perfectly watchable film. This is not something you have to throw away or worried about like characters making all of the wrong typical decisions and whatnot. Now, is it corny? Yeah, of course it's corny. Lance Henriksen's wearing buck teeth, trying to look a little bit more backwoodsy than he normally does. He conjures up through the local witch a creature named Pumpkinhead that will avenge the loss of his son. I think it's well played out. In terms of watchability, most of these movies are just, from the 80s, horror movies, are just unbearable to watch, right? And I'll even say, like, even fun ones that are supposed to be easy to watch, like The Blob or Critters 2 earlier in 1980, I didn't have nearly as much fun with those as I did with Pumpkinhead. So I'm not necessarily interested in diving into the whole mythos, but the creature actually looks really darn good, and for 1988, I'm pleasantly surprised by this one.
Yeah, same. It's a dumb fun.
It's goofy as fuck. But
Yeah.
Don't try and actually follow the narrative of this.
It's so dumb,
But I guess that Stan Winston had caught some pointers. You can see a little bit of Cameron in this movie. You can see that like Corman-esque sensibility to him. That yes, it's wacky, but we're all taking this seriously, so it matters. The other one that I watched this week, Night of the Demons, and the previous category that I mentioned of films that you can hardly watch from the 80s because they're so terrible. This is one of those. It's low budget. It's got bad special effects to a point, but it's mostly makeup, turning characters into demon things. And there's some nudity that you don't need, but this movie has to distract you with something because it's completely nonsensical. The poster is a good poster. It's another one of those 80s horror posters that you look at and say, oh, that one looks like it might actually do something for me. It doesn't, though. It plays way more like softcore porn than it does late night horror, midnight showing type stuff.
So Bob loves it.
Bob's never seen it.
Well, there is
No, I was talking about Bob from The Accused.
There you go.
See, I can make anything funny. No.
Actress Linnea something. I can't remember her
Quigley?
last name. Quigley, thank you.
From Here in Town?
Yes. She is one of the lead, like, bad witch characters in this movie, and she's the one with the gratuitous nudity, and I'm like, why do I know that name? And I started to click through filmography and saw, like...
Davenport. Oh, she's from Davenport.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Huh. Okay, well, I saw a lot of movies that had questionable titles, like...
Oh, yeah.
Vice something, or...
She's a scream queen.
Yeah.
But she just happens to be local. And then there was Another Woman, Woody Allen, Mia Farrow, and then that Kiss movie I talked about, and then a Shirley MacLaine movie that I'm not even going to try to pronounce.
Madame Suzaka,
there you go.
something like that.
Suzatska.
Oh, okay. Have you seen it?
It's based on a famous play. That's all I know.
Okay. Yeah, didn't watch any of those.
All right, next week we've got Halloween Part 2, sort of. Kinda.
Yeah. Sure.
The Hate You Give, I think, is coming.
Yeah.
I don't know if anything else is, but that's what Box House Mojo had. Our classic is Dawn of the Dead. And our top 5 is we're going to bring horror movies back and see if they've changed since last time we did it. So top 5 horror movies. Anything else that I'm forgetting besides content-wise before I get on to...
I forgot to lead in our classic with a rendition of New Kids on the Block to throw people off, because it was the right stuff.
Would you rather watch that movie again or listen to the right stuff again?
I'll go with the movie because I've already listened to the song like 1,000 times in my life.
It's like a 2-minute song. I didn't say 3 hours of the right stuff.
Okay. So 5 minutes of the right stuff or 5 minutes of the song, I'll go with the movie.
I'm talking about the full movie, 3 hours and 15 minutes, or the song one time.
Well, I guess I could go through the song one time, and that wouldn't be bad.
It's a good movie.
I bet it's long. Very, 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 very long.
I couldn't dance like the video, though. That's for sure.
I could.
Awesome. I would pay good money to see it. We're not a video show at this point.
Patreon supporters. Anyway, that is our show. I do want to thank our Patreon supporters for supporting the podcast. If you want to be a supporter, head over to ihatecritics.net/Patreon, and here they are. Up here are key grip levels, Jason Bryant and Charlie Messing. Our character actors, Cousin Jeff, Christina Cato, and Josh Paul.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Our special effects level, Sarah Ward and Corey from Ivy Envy.
May the Force be with you.
Our associate producer is Jason from New Mexico.
Everybody has to eat shaving cream once in a while.
And our movie stars are Uncle Jeff and Dave Sievers.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
And if you, like I said, if you want to be a Patreon supporter, ihatecritics.net/Patreon. It's the best way to help support the podcast. And then obviously subscribe and rate and review the show on whatever podcatcher you listen to us on. And that's our show. We'll see you next week.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the 3 best friends that anybody could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best 3 friends that anybody could have. I mean the 3 best friends that anybody could have. That's right, the 3 best friends that
Me, myself, and Irene are Superman Returns.
Which one is Superman Returns?
Brandon Routh.
Yeah, Superman Returns.
Agreed.
Me, myself, and Irene is kind of hard to watch.
The Incredible Shrinking Man. I've never seen that.
Skip it.
LA Confidential or Transformers.
LA Confidential.
Agreed.
Office Space or Terminator Salvation.
Office Space.
Office Space.
The Usual Suspects or Gangs of New York.
I feel like more people should watch Gangs of New York. I think there's a lot of people who have opinions on Gangs of New York without seeing it. Not sure where to go on that. Somebody else answer.
I'll go The Usual Suspects.
I'm going with The Usual Suspects.
Fair enough.
If I want to watch Gangs of New York, I can pull open a few of my college textbooks.
I've seen it. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the film either. Like, I've actually seen it. The whole big, huge production.
Magnolia Into the Wild.
Ooh, that is tough. That is
not for
really
me and Josh, but we're on the opposite
You're the deciding
ends.
point here.
Think of the frogs. Think of the frogs.
Yeah, that make no sense. He didn't even know what they represented when he made it.
It was his best performance.
That's the only thing it has going for it.
That's Magnolia. Yeah. Respect the cock.
That's right. What was that? Venom. Did you notice Melora Walters in Venom?
I love Melora Walters.
Yeah.
She's
the
so great.
Magnolia connection. I'm picking Magnolia, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
Romeo and Juliet 96 or Jungle Fever.
It's another tough one. Jungle Fever.
I haven't seen Jungle Fever myself.
I think I would have gone Jungle Fever. I've seen them both, but I think I'd go Jungle Fever. Sabotage 2014. I did not watch that one, or Mad Max.
Skip Sabotage. And we already know what's going to happen. So.
Spirited Away. It looks like a.
Oh, Spirited Away. That's Hayao Miyazaki.
I've seen that one.
Picking
Great
that
movie.
Over
Mad Max.
I would pick
the
Mad
original.
Max.
Oh, you would pick Mad Max?
I would pick Spirited Away. It was one of my top 10 movies of the year it came out.
Well, I refreshed it anyway. So Total Recall or Mad Max?
Which Total Recall?
The Schwarzenegger one.
And this is Mel Gibson Mad Max?
Yes, 79.
Total Recall.
Total Recall.
I think I'd agree with that. The Prestige or Step Brothers?
The Prestige. Step Brothers is really shrill.
Prestige. But I do quote Step Brothers maybe a little too often with the so much room for activities thing.
Star Wars The Force Awakens or War of the Worlds?
Where do I go on that? War of the World is pretty good.
It would matter to me if it's the old or newer War of the Worlds.
The Tom Cruise one.
Okay.
It's a good movie. I still love Force Awakens.
I'll go with War of the Worlds here.
As will I. And I don't like War of the Worlds. How the Grinch Stole Christmas or An American Tale? The Ron Howard one. Grinch.
American Tale.
American Tale.
The King and I haven't seen that. Have you guys?
Yeah.
I've seen it, but you can skip it.
Malcolm X or Juno?
Juno.
Malcolm X.
I'll go Juno. Haven't seen Malcolm X in a long time, though.
Malcolm X is an exceptional movie, but I had a revelation with Juno.
American Pie or Home Alone?
American Pie.
That's a pretty good matchup, actually. Throwaway but nostalgic.
Right, your throwaway kid movie or your throwaway teenage or college movie.
Home Alone is less offensive in a way. I would need to go back and watch American Pie right now and see how it makes me feel as a 39-year-old versus a college-age kid, because it's been quite a while since I've seen it.
And you know how Home Alone will make you feel.
Yeah. I'll take Home Alone.
I'll go American Pie. I went to a birthday party last night. Andy from IVNV, he turned 40, and someone was telling a story of this guy that they go out to the bar with, and he has to see a list of the beers, and he sits and talks to the bartender, then orders a Coors Light. Just wastes their time, and then gets a light beer.
I don't even drink beer, and I know that's lame.
Kind of funny.
What would be the point of that be?
Just to annoy waste the bartender's time. Just a dick move is all.
Wow.
I don't know. I think it's funny. And he did come up to me, Andy, and said that we offended him. And I don't know that he listens. He may or may not, but I think it was more me offending him. The John Cusack week where he was the top 5.
Yeah.
I believe all my hashtags were like John Cusack, top 5, movie podcast, high fidelity, nothing else. And he found that offensive. And obviously, I don't speak for the show. I just speak for myself.
Right. That was the most popular in terms of people interaction top 5 that we've had in a long time. So, yeah.
Doesn't make him right. Little Nicky or Raising Arizona?
Raising Arizona.
Raising Arizona.
Ghost or My Cousin Vinny?
My Cousin Vinny.
My Cousin Vinny.
Skyfall or Casper?
Fishing with Gandhi.
Gotta pick one. Death Proof or Lawrence of Arabia?
Death Proof.
Lawrence of Arabia.
That's Death Proof, but I feel bad about it. The Dark Knight or Police Academy?
Dark Knight.
Dark Knight.
The Terminator or Minority Report?
Minority Report.
Terminator.
I'm going Terminator, but I feel like I need to see Minority Report again. Quantum of Solace or Return of the Jedi?
Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi.
Dances with Wolves or 28 Days Later?
28 Days Later.
Dances with Wolves.
28 Days Later. Good Will Hunting or Ice Age 2?
Good Will Hunting.
Agreed.
Like, part of me wants to get Alien versus Predator. Like, was it Jeff that got it? Your cousin Jeff?
Yeah.
Like, that's how you're going to end this.
we can't do this
we
anymore.
can never do it ever again. If I ever got that. Twilight or Home Alone?
Home Alone.
I haven't seen Twilight. Don't plan on it.
What do you think's better?
Home Alone.
Hearts in Atlantis or Collateral?
Collateral. Although Hearts in Atlantis is underrated.
Indeed. That was one of the first movies I started seeing on my own back in 2001. Like, started going to a whole bunch on my own that time. And that was the first one. But I'll go with the other one, whatever it was.
Collateral.
Collateral, yeah.
Trading Places or What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Trading Places. That's a lot of nostalgia, though.
Yeah, agreed.
I bet if I watch that movie now, it's probably not going to be nearly as funny as it was when I was a kid.
I watched it not that long ago, and I enjoyed it. Mambo Italia.
Skip it.
What the hell? Ooh, this will be fun. Good one to go out on. Disturbia or Anger Management?
Disturbia.
Disturbia.
Anger Management. Isn't Disturbia bad?
Disturbia is not great, but Anger Management has Adam Sandler.
It's got Jack Nicholson.
And even he looks bad working with Adam Sandler.
He looks fun. All right, one more. Psycho or Labyrinth?
Which Psycho?
1960.
It's Psycho.
Psycho.
I just wanted Labyrinth to lose.